Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone, every of our listener, viewers who have joined us today. Today, we are welcoming a special episode on our podcast series, whereas we are talking with one of the very leading global experts in dementia in Indian space. Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Mrigna Nagraj. With me is our co-host, Pankaj. This month is about awareness and compassion. It's today's episode. We are going to talk about some of the most important questions that people ask about dementia, ranging from what is dementia to going to what are the rights of a person who really has dementia. So, giving the baton to my co host, Pankaj.
Thank you, Dr. Mrigna. And at the front, I would like to welcome Ramani, who is the Executive Director with Dementia India Alliance. And DIA, in a short form, is the leading organization which is working for the cause and care of dementia care in the country. And it was an honor to really see the journey of Dementia India Alliance and the board as well as the trustees and the advisors who have joined forces to promote memory care, mental health, and dementia. So welcome, Ramni. We really look forward to learning a lot of things from you, especially how dementia uh, is developing or how it is growing and how we can do something about this particular sector from the corporate level as well as from your perspective level, because what I understand is you are a neuroscience professional who's been working in this sector for almost a decade and a half, and with your experience of Nightingale Trust and Nightingale setup in Bangalore, I think we couldn't find anyone better in the country to guide us and give us inputs on it. So welcome, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here.
So, Ramani, since we were so excited about having you here, and especially as we know this is Dementia Care Month, where we are talking about awareness about dementia. So, let's begin with one of the most basic things that people think about. So, the biggest myth of all is that memory loss is dementia, right? But the truth is, the memory problem can come from many things like stress, vitamin deficiency, thyroid issues, depression, and even sometimes side effects of certain medicine that people, are taking for on regular basis. So my question to you is, dementia is more than forgetfulness, and how do people differentiate like basic forgetfulness that can happen to anyone versus dementia? How is it different?
Right. Thank you for asking that question. One of the things that I have been doing in my career is a lot of awareness around dementia. And when we go out and talk to people, and we would always ask, what do you think dementia is? And people will say, oh, it's about forgetting, it's memory loss. And then there'll be jokes around the room saying, oh, I forget my keys, I forget my glasses. Does that mean I have dementia? So, what happens is when you say dementia is memory loss, it actually brings down the overall gravity of the situation. Dementia is not about memory loss, it is about a lot of the different aspects of our cognition, our mental abilities, right? So when we talk about our mental abilities, it's just not memory. It is language, it's comprehension, it is calculation, decision making. It's about how you go about functioning your life, how you go about doing your activities of daily living on day-to-day basis. That's what forms your cognitive abilities. And dementia is when it affects all of these domains, which actually leads to you not being able to do your activities of daily living. So often it starts with memory loss. That's the reason many of the times it's equated to memory loss, but then it progresses to many more things. One of the things we also have to understand is whatever we know, whether it's language, whether it's comprehension, whether it's decision making, it all comes from acquired knowledge, which is then comes from memory. So when you have loss of memory, all of this tends to be affected. So it's much wider spectrum. So that's the first part of answer. The second about differentiating it with normal aging. Now that is a difficult thing to do, and that's the reason many times dementia is always seen as memory loss due to aging. It's a very thin line that actually divides aging related memory loss to dementia. In aging related memory loss, people forget. In dementia, also, there is forgetfulness. So, how does one differentiate? In aging related memory loss, it usually doesn't get worse with time. That's one thing that people have to understand. While in dementia, it does get worse with time. And number two, in aging related memory loss, people may forget one or two parts of an incident. And when you try to give them some sort of, clue, or, you try to give them more details, they're often able to recollect it. But when people have dementia related memory loss, they tend to forget the entire episode. And the most important aspect is when someone has aging related memory loss, it does not affect their day to day functioning. But when someone has memory loss due to dementia, it affects their day to day functioning. So, if somebody knows how to use a complicated remote to change a channel, if a person has a memory loss due to normal aging, he may not forget how to use the remote. But in dementia related memory loss, he may forget how to use a remote. So, that's how you are supposed to differentiate. However, it's a very, very thin line. And that's the reason we say that after the age of 55, get yourself screened just to check if at all you are at the risk of dementia related cognitive impairment.
Oh, excellent. To be honest, I have never heard such a clear understanding or clear guidance on such a thing. Even I, as a layman or as a person in the sector for some time, even I thought, okay, dementia is memory loss. This guy's Alzheimer's is a case. This is this case. But when you're explaining it to me, I think it is going to stay with my memory, and I'm sure a lot of other people will also understand how things happen. So, Ramni, coming from a personal experience, my own grandfather lived with dementia for almost 7, 8 years. My own uncle lived with dementia for 12 years. And probably one of them could be age related, one of them could be dementia. But what I wanted to understand is like, what is the impact on family regarding the memory issues, because it is not a regular ailment, it is a lot of care which is required. And secondly, what are the kind of legal rights of people who are in this kind of situation? Because developed countries, I've seen, yes, there is a lot of things about mental health and mental capacity act, like UK have a mental capacity act. And but somehow in India, it's something which we want to understand from your perspective as to what is the entire framework when it comes to the legal aspect of people with memory loss.
Right. So we always say that dementia is a condition that just does not affect the individual, it also affects the family. So the diagnosis is not for the individual, it's actually for the family. And it just does not stop there. We say that as it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community to care for somebody with dementia, because it doesn't affect just the person, not just the family, but also the society and at the community at large. The effects usually are rippling. So we need to understand it. And when someone gets dementia, what happens is the person is deteriorating, you're losing the person. And we say that it's a long goodbye, it's a dual goodbye, because you have to say bye to the person and then you have to say bye to the body which hosted the person, right? So the person is lost by the family two times. The grieving is way longer, way more when it comes to dementia. And many times, in order to care for people with dementia, families have to really struggle. They have to run pillar to post to care for someone with dementia. Because what happens is, since they are unable to decide for themselves, they have challenging behavior, it deteriorates with time. People face chronic dependency. People may have to leave their job to care for someone with dementia, number one. So, what happens is there is a lot of financial stress that falls on the family. If you're not a well-off family, you really have to leave your job and sit at home and look after someone. If you come from a well-off place, then you have to hire a home help who can care for somebody with dementia. In India, currently, none, actually, very few home care providers have caregivers who are dementia trained. So it's a very challenging aspect to get someone who's dementia trained, and also it is expensive. So that is also something that people have to know about, and people have very difficult behaviors. They question their own family members, who they are. They have to face it on day in and day out. So it's physical stress, it's emotional stress, it's financial stress. So there's all kind of stress that comes to the family. And many times what happen is, it seldom happens that in any other condition, people who care for such people are called caregivers. But in dementia, it is very clearly identified that you are a family caregiver. So what happens is your identity merges with caregiving. So if you go to a person who's caring for somebody with dementia, when you ask them, how do you identify yourself? They perhaps may not say Mrigna, Ramani. The first thing they will say is, I'm a family caregiver. So that's the impact of dementia. It impacts the identity of family caregivers. We have seen people where marriages have broken. We've seen where families have undergone depression because they really cannot, leave their parents, but at the same time, caring for them is excruciatingly difficult. So it's really a challenging condition to navigate for anywhere between 3 to 12 years of life that the person is going to live. And as you go below the socioeconomic sector, as you go even lower, it's even more challenging. We have heard stories of people really tying the person to a cot with a long rope and going off to work because they have no other choice. They have to make the money to care for somebody with dementia. So we realize that it's really, really challenging. And at present, we do not have enough support systems to support people across the spectrum of dementia, across the spectrum of socioeconomic status as well. That's the first part. Now, when it comes to legal rights of persons with dementia, the Mental Health Care Act of 2017 is definitely a very much forward thinking act which the government has put out. And it gives all the rights to a person with mental illness, including somebody with dementia, as it would be for any normal person. They have right to privacy, they have right to, sort of consent for their treatment. Even though we say that in dementia, people really may not be able to consent, they may not have capacity to consent. The Mental Health Care Act tells that just because someone has dementia, it doesn't mean that they don't have capacity to consent. So it gives them the right to actually decide the course of treatment, albeit they have to be assessed by a clinician, but it gives them the right to privacy. It's giving them the right to protection against cruel treatment. It gives them right to protection against restraints. See, that's one major challenge in dementia. When a person is going on wandering, or the person is doing self harm, or he's harming others, many times unknowingly, in all good faith, family members may just restrain the person to a room or to a chair or to a bed. To them, that is the best way they are caring for the person. But from a human right perspective, you are actually limiting somebody's independence, somebody's movement against their will. So these are things that mental health care is aiming to protect. Now, it is a very high window that they have kept. How it would be implemented is another aspect that really needs to be looked into. I think Government of India really put out the act in good faith, but then implementation requires thousand more arms. So we have to really see, do we have those kind of arms to really regulate all these things at community level or at residential care level?
Excellent, brilliant. In fact, I remember around a year and a half back, I had done the entire analysis of the Mental Health Care Act. And one thing which I found, and I gave a feedback to various authorities also, the word dementia doesn't appear only in the Mental Health Care Act. Mental Health Care Act, to my understanding, talks only about mental illness.
Yeah.
So, do
So
you think it is fair to avoid words like dementia, Alzheimer's, or any other symptom which leads to dementia? Because technically, when you talk about legal language, when dementia word is not there, then how does a person fall under that category?
I think that's a very fair question. In fact, during my tenure at Nightingale's Medical Trust, I was heading all their residential care facility, and that's the conundrum we faced for quite some time. But then what we realized is in Mental Health Care Act, they have actually sort of put out a broad explanation on who all falls under the act. Act. And in that, there is an explanation which says that people who have issues with memory, comprehension, so they've used certain words which would be used to define dementia. So that's the reason what happens is it falls under the Mental Health Care Act. As far as Mental Health Care Act is concerned, I think in a way it's a double-edged sword when it comes to dementia care.
Yes.
The good aspect of it is it's giving some sort of protection to people with dementia through the act. So that is definitely the positive aspect of it. But the other aspect, which I wouldn't call it negative, but rather the non-addressed factor of it, is that people with dementia, as they progress, they're only going to get worse. But the clauses of the Mental Health Care Act treats it like any other mental illness, which may not deteriorate with time. So what happens is they have put such conditions in the act that is practically very difficult to execute in an Indian setting. For example, the Section 89 or the Section 90 of the Act. It says Section 89 says you can admit a person with dementia for a maximum of 30 days. And then if you want to extend the admission, two independent psychiatrists have to say that the person has to continue. And every 14 days, capacity assessment needs to be done. Now, it's extremely difficult in an Indian scenario to engage two psychiatrists to actually define that, this person is going to continue in a residential care center, one. Number two, 14-day capacity assessment. Every 14-day capacity assessment is something that is absolutely practically not required for somebody with dementia. We know that the capacity to consent is going to deteriorate in a person with dementia, and perhaps in moderate stages of dementia. Mrigna and all of us have worked in dementia care. We understand after a certain stage, it is actually, there is no point in doing capacity assessment
Yes.
because the lost capacity is not going to come back after a while. So those are challenges that we need to really talk about. And in residential care centers, admissions are usually long term. So when you say, when you have given a window of only 90, then 120 days, what does the person do after that if they cannot go back home? Now that those are questions that are still unanswered. And if you look at the, I think it's the clause 101, which talks about people with mental health issues who are destitutes. It says that you cannot admit them in any private care homes or NGO run care homes because it is the responsibility of the government or the police. Where do you have so many destitute homes that work for mentally ill in the government sector? You don't have, but you're taking away the rights of good meaning NGOs to care for those people. So where would they go? So I think there are a lot of implementation challenges that are with Mental Health Care Act. And one of the most important challenges with it is, what do you do if you're an assisted living facility or an old age home facility who has persons with dementia? What would you do? You can't go under the Mental Health Care Act. You cannot really comply with it. It's very complicated. Where do you go and leave them? We don't have facilities which can care for them. So I think implementation is really a challenge, and government really needs to look at how do you want to implement in a long term
No,
aspect.
that is the exact reason we are having these kind of sessions, is to understand the ground reality and try to collectively do something in whatever little way. Because expecting the government to do everything is not going to happen. We all know that situation. Now it's easy to. Number one is I am really happy that this kind of document came up. First thing. But yes, the first cut needs to be further improved. So any international document, they keep reviewing it and they keep improving on it. So I think this is where Dementia India Alliance, 50 Plus Assist, Elderly Care India, we come up and we try to find different ways and means of at least highlighting that these are a few couple of paragraphs if you add will be will be more sustainable and it will cover up a lot of things. So what exact points you're saying is hardcore reality which needs to be worked in some way. It may take 6 months, it may take 1 year, it may take 2 years, but at least people will be aware that yes, from the industry we are talking of or from the sector we are talking of. So I think brilliant. Yeah, thank you for this kind of inputs here. Very amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Ramni, the point is very valid in terms of that if the capacity to consent is not there, how do you keep seeking it again and again and again and again? And it's a very logical point. And especially, I feel, yes, I think the assisted living places really struggle with it a lot. But also at home care, where, families caring for an individual, probably a family member, you know. and a constant stress that they're undergoing personally, there may be a support system or there may not be a support system to help in this case. So coming to the legal, again, the legal aspect of it, or where we can kind of help around, or where we can kind of understand it a little more better. Do you really think, I mean, I've been working in this field for more than a decade and a half, and do you really think a person with dementia can make a will once diagnosed? And even if not diagnosed, if the symptoms has started to appear, do you think they should be able, or they can make a will? That is one question that I have to you. And second question, part of the same question would be that in case they are able to, or they have appointed a nominated representative, how practical is it in Indian situation and scenario to follow that?
Right.
Is
Uh,
the second part of the same question.
Right. Thank you for asking that. I think we nowadays we are getting it a lot. I think after the Supreme Court judgment on the living will, that one should actually respect the living will, and you need to put systems in place in order to implement it, make it simplified. People don't have to run from pillar to post to get it done. They have done some forward thinking step.
Correct.
With respect to dementia, there's no easy answer to it, because in many kinds of dementia, sometimes cognition is a bit fluid as well. People do have those stages of clarity where they're able to decide for themselves, and then there are stages where they're unable to decide for themselves. So it is definitely a complicated condition. Dementia by itself is a complicated condition. When it comes to will, I think there are two kinds of will, right? The legal will that you make, which covers your property, what happens to it, who takes care of it, and all of that. So that's one. And then there is a living will wherein you decide how you would like to be cared for in case you are no longer in a mindset to decide for yourself, or you're non-communicative, or you're at the end of life. So there are two aspects to will itself. And when I talk about decision making capacity itself, then there are two kinds of aspect to that itself. There is competence and there is capacity. So when we talk about competence, it's the understanding that this is my property, this much what it is, and how I want to divide it among my children, what I want to give, what I don't want to give. All this comes, the legal aspect, the financial aspect comes into competency, but it is somehow related to capacity. The capacity is all about, can I decide if they tell, oh, this is the treatment that I want to do with you? Can I decide whether it's good for me, it's not good for me, what are the adverse effects? Those are the two kinds of aspect. We do have assessment which works on capacity, but do we have clear assessments on competence? It's a bit of a gray area. With respect to capacity, for example, in Mental Health Care Act itself, it says that an admission should be done with the consent. If it is done without the consent, that's why they have put section 89, right, which is called supported admission, that the person is unable to decide for themselves, and thus you are admitting the person with the help of the family caregiver. So when it comes to capacity assessment, I think it is important that people understand that just because a person has cognitive impairment or has a diagnosis of dementia, they are no longer capable is not true. In fact, in the Mental Health Care Act itself, it has given that rights to the person with dementia, saying they do have capacity unless it is proven otherwise. So it is important to understand that they need to get an assessment done with people who are experts on this. It could be neurologists, it could be psychiatrists, those are the people who are now looking into dementia care, and mostly it is psychiatrists who tend to do these capacity assessments. You go and get the capacity assessment done, and they will be able to tell you whether they are in the mindset of being able to do a will for themselves, a living will, or the other legal will for themselves. So that's number one. But in India, the practical challenge is that people do not really recognize dementia unless it is moderate. Even during the mild stages of dementia, dementia usually doesn't get diagnosed because it is always brushed under the garb of normal aging, that people, 60 हो गया है, सठिया गए हैं या भूल गए हैं, it all goes under that kind of a stigmatous myth sort of a thing, right? So we diagnose people with dementia mostly in moderate stages, and in those stages, most of the time, they're not capable, because they would come to us because they are unable to operate a bank account. They would come to us because they will tell that he doesn't understand the value of money. He or she doesn't understand what is the difference between 100, 500. They may also have delusional thought that the children are trying to harm them. So in that that capacity, if they make a will, they may not really do the right distribution that otherwise they would have done if they were in the right stage of mind.
Or
So
they
that is
can be
one thing.
influenced also in that case. It's
Absolutely. They can
easy.
be easily influenced as well. So that is something that needs to be understood. Even in the Mental Health Care Act, that's the reason they say that they should have a nominated representative who can thus decide on the person's behalf. And it also gives another word, that is advance directive, wherein he or she can write that what needs to happen to them as the disease progress and they are no longer in a capacity to actually decide for themselves. Having said that, I think one of the things we need to realize is that in dementia, some sort of capacity is there to decide whether I want this or not for myself. So that needs to be respected. I'm not talking about the legal and the financial aspects of it, but on certain decision making skill, we can't stay mute on that and we should respect it. But overall, the practical implementation of it, there is no easy answers. I think awareness is very poor about the legal rights of a person with dementia. Awareness is very much poor about living will or the other wills. We have every day we have family calling on our national dementia helpline, and they will call and they will say that my father did not divide the property. Now he is into dementia. Can you help us on how we can go about it? There's no way of going back and doing it, and it's a struggle that the family has to go through. Or the person is getting a pension, for example. The person's signature do not match the bank signatures. The pension is there, but you cannot use it for the care of a person with dementia. So these are challenges that are very much there. Though the Supreme Court order has made it easier to, sort of respect if there is a living will, and it has to be taken as a clear legal document. But how to go about it, even at hospital level, people really do not have an awareness. So tomorrow, all of a sudden, if people bring up a living will, the doctors will have to really think it through on what to do with it. They will still may go back to the children and ask them, you tell us what we need to do. Do we need to intubate? Do we not need to intubate? I think we have a long way to go in terms of awareness and practical implementation of those things. But the good thing, the conversation has started.
Yeah, I think that's the most beautiful part of it between three of us when we're talking here. It's just a small part of it. But the conversation has started, and I think the basic awareness, especially from the people who are working in the field, from the challenges they're facing, in day to day taking care for somebody with dementia, is I think that is a huge part of the whole process, I feel. And coming to the fluidity, since we spoke about that the cognitive skills are very fluid in this case. At one day, there is a bright day when there is a lot of cognition and they're all there, and the next day it's just not there, or there are a few weeks of blankness as we see at times. So Ramni, in this case, how easy, I would say, or how difficult, let's talk about it. How difficult do you feel it is, especially for the family members to understand, especially that you are working towards the awareness side of it? So, I mean, especially like we don't, I mean, we work with a certain section of society at this point in time, which is educated, which probably has read, and there also we find it very difficult because at times I hear a lot of families complaining, oh, she's pretending. कल तो ठीक थी आज कैसे हो गया, you know you hear these things a lot of times, while conversing. So how easy it is, especially, or how difficult it is for you as a organization or as a team to talk to these people who really literally sometimes don't have any educational background, who have no understanding of something like this, which is so dynamic, so fluid, every day changing can exist. How do you counsel these people? How do you counsel these families?
Um, it's actually very challenging, and I think that just to make them understand that that particular person is not doing what he's doing on purpose is something that really takes an effort to make them understand. It requires a lot of awareness. It requires a lot of counseling. It requires them to understand is what is actually happening inside the brain. See, what happens is when a person is visibly sick, you empathize, your heart goes
Right.
out to them, you want to care for them. But when a person has a mental illness or a neurodegenerative illness like dementia, in much of the early stages, even up to moderate stages, they don't look sick. So when they don't look sick, you really don't really have that kind of empathy towards them. So definitely, that's a challenge, not just with dementia, with any other mental health illness as well. If somebody has schizophrenia, they're moving about, they're doing their job, you really don't seem to empathize with them
Yeah,
vis-a-vis someone who is perhaps handicapped or disabled, right? Because you're able to
correct.
see their challenge. Here this challenge is much internal, the struggle is much internal. So that is something that requires a lot of awareness. And what we try to do with the families is, that's the reason much of our family caregiver training goes up to 6 hours, 7 hours, sometimes 20 hours. And we involve many family caregivers. See, in India, the problem is that caregiving is no one single person's job. When it comes to decision making, when it comes to caring, it is only one person's job. But when it comes to
Yes.
decision making, it is multiple people's job. So what happens is, when you want to explain about dementia, there's wife, there is a son sitting in the city, there's a son sitting abroad, there's one daughter-in-law sitting at other places, everyone wants to get involved, there's a first cousin, second cousin, everyone wants to get involved. So sometimes you need to have to do a family counseling to explain what is actually happening to them. They need to understand that dementia is not a psychiatric condition, it's a neuropsychiatric condition. There are changes in the brain due to which the person is acting a certain way. So that needs to be understood. And especially in if you look at rural areas, I think it's simpler, if I could put it that way, that though they may not
Oh,
understand, I feel they are,
mm,
since they don't understand, they don't go into the complications of it. I think they just decide that you need to care for that individual. And I think that's quite simple. And when they don't behave in a certain way, I think in rural what happens is, they would have seen somebody with this condition and they would have thought it is part of normal aging. So many of the times the person is treated very normally. And I find beauty in that aspect of treating somebody like that. And in rural area, one of the other challenges that are there is that people with dementia, we really don't see them much at the primary healthcare centers or at the diagnostic places, because much of the time they are at home. Because people don't know it is dementia, they might become worse, they may be bedridden, and they just pass away like that. We really don't see them at the community health centers or the PHCs. And the family also do not seek out for help, because their basic necessities, food, the money, they want to ensure that they go by their day to day life. So what happens is, for us, quality of life for an elderly person with dementia is very important. But when you're trying to meet your daily needs, that doesn't seems to take priority in your life. So that becomes a little different when it comes to rural areas. A lot of awareness is required when it comes to the rural part of the country, the uneducated part of the country. Also, we do not have those kind of sensitive tools that can actually pick up cognitive impairment in rural areas. We don't have those kind of tools which can pick up cognitive impairment in people with sensory issues. Most of the time, elderly will have one or the other sensory issues. Either they are not able to see, either they are not able to hear. So how do you do testing on those people who have sensory impairment? You seem to leave out a large chunk of those people out. And with respect to caregivers, I think professionals like us, we keep a very non-judgmental view when family caregivers tell us that they are doing it on purpose, because I think it doesn't stem from a wrong place. It stems from a place of hope that perhaps he may not have dementia, he's doing it on purpose, perhaps it is something treatable. Many times we have seen it. That's where it comes from. So
mhm.
I think they all mean in very much good spirit. I think proper education, proper guidance and hand holding helps the family to go through it. In an Indian scenario, much of the time diagnosis is given in a rush. You have your father has dementia, he will forget everything, go deal with it. This is not how a diagnosis of dementia can be given. You have to sit them down. They need to understand advanced care planning. They need to understand the person may not be able to sign, the person may forget the near and dear ones, financial arrangement, palliative care, costs that are going to come to them. All of it needs to be understood. So how do you communicate the diagnosis? Sitting them down and diagnostic counseling is something that we are very much lacking. If we have all of this, perhaps the space will not look, I don't want to use the word better, but rather more supportive.
So
That's actually correct. I think one thing that I highly recommend to all the seniors after a given age is talk to their banker, whichever bank they're using, and change the signature to a thumb impression. that I feel is something that, at times can really help them, especially with any advanced neurodegenerative condition, let it be Parkinson's or, dementia, whatever it may be. So personally, I feel that really helps individual. And these days, I don't know how it is in the rural India, but in the urban India, at least we have these facilities where the bankers come to your house if you have a pre-arranged call, and they help you with the banking needs, at least, which I feel is a very good step towards helping individuals with certain neurodegenerative conditions and everything. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful place to say that it's not going to make it better, but to make it more supportive is all what we can do. So whenever I speak to somebody with dementia, I always tell them we're not going to heal the person. He's not going to get cured. What we can do is to manage, to help, to
Yeah.
support. So, yeah, I think that's a very beautiful take on it, Ramni. What do you think, Pankaj?
No, definitely. I think this has been a very insightful session, genuinely. And from my side, I just, as an individual person, I wanted to ask you from my side, that's the last question to ask you is, uh, does Dementia India Alliance has any data on terms of what is the percentage of people with memory issues in rural areas or state-wise or age group, or gender-wise? Something which is public information, because in our on our website we have put in a lot of demographics, so
Right.
probably something about dementia also, if we can create a tab and say that, okay, probably Punjab rural has got more thing than Maharashtra, or but whatever the statistics which we can do, because end of the day, I think information sharing is the objective of the entire initiative. So
Yeah,
if any kind
so
of,
I
yeah.
think I think that's a good question. I think as Dementia India Alliance, we may not have a statewide, nationwide perspective on what are the prevalences, but I think we do have a very good paper which released in 2021, this Lassie Dat study, which looked into dementia prevalence in multiple states, and that's a very good document. In fact, even the government tries to go back to the document to look at not just about aging but also about dementia. They've put out prevalences statewide for each of the state, in which they've said that the countrywide prevalence is 7.4% among people who are above the age of 60, and they've said that Jammu Kashmir is perhaps the highest in terms of prevalence of cognitive impairment in people above the age of 60. Karnataka is again higher than the state average. I think it's about 7.6%. Andhra Pradesh is higher. So they have put out statewide prevalences, and it's more urban though. It's not very much rural, but there are individual studies that have come out of NIMHANS, AIMS, and other academic institutions where they have looked at the rural percentages. But as I was discussing earlier, I think we do not really have such kind of sensitive tools to really pick up cognitive impairment when it comes to rural vis-a-vis urban. There are issues with that. We are linguistically a highly diverse country. We are functionally a highly diverse country. So, there are a lot of challenges when it comes to mapping cognitive impairment in India. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially in rural areas. We really don't know the prevalence very much. So that is something that needs to be looked into. And even the Lassie Dad said that there is 7.4% prevalence when we were doing advocacy with the government of Karnataka. They along with NIMHANS and all of us, we have seen about mostly I think 5% prevalence. So they were asking us, where are the rest of the people? So the problem is that prevalence is usually calculated when people come to you, you diagnose. In India there is a 90% treatment gap. So there are so many people out there who are not diagnosed, and as I said, people with dementia rarely come to a hospital or a clinic. They are at home. So if you really want to identify the prevalence, you have to go out to the community and do something like a door to door screening or something like that, which Dementia India Alliance is currently doing. And when we are doing our screening, we are picking up 7.4% of prevalence. We are picking up prevalence anywhere between 6 to 8%. So there is a possibility that the average prevalence is somewhere around that. So we need more community driven studies, but these are expensive. So in just to answer in short, I think Lassie Dad is a very good sort of a document to put out first. And we, as we are doing our screening, we are also making a lot of documents public based on the places where we are screening, mostly in the South Indian states. And I'm sure in North Indian state, it might amaze us the kind of percentage that will be there, because we really don't have so much awareness. Nobody is doing really in-depth prevalence studies on dementia. So I think that might be a good starting point to really look at how big the problem is. I think we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg at the moment, and that itself is a huge economic impact. If we really unleash what is the true numbers, I think we are really looking at an epidemic that needs very much a lot of preparation from government level, society level, and at an individual level.
No, I think that's
Yeah.
a very valid thing, and I strongly believe uh, solution to nikal lenge hum log. Don't worry, and not everything really requires too much of money. It's just a matter of how you pitch it to the right people and to people who have a heart to really do something. So I think a lot of these government officials at the district levels these days are very educated and they are very sensitive also.
Yeah, that we have to give it to the government. I think when we are doing advocacy effort, we approached Karnataka, they came on board. We now approach Tamil Nadu, they have come on board. We approached Pondicherry, they have come on board. Now Andhra
Give me
Pradesh
one
is
month.
coming on
Give
board.
me 2 months. Give me two
Yeah,
months.
yeah. So
All
intent
the
is there.
districts in the country will know what Dementia India Alliance is and what Elderly Care India, and they already
No,
know
thank
about it.
you. Thank you.
So,
So, but
our objective is that we'll put them and we'll sensitize them without giving a major big kind of thing. So that solutions will come offline as when we talk about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But
No, what
yeah,
I was
really,
trying to tell is that intent with the government of India, there is intent. And when there is intent, the path is way more easier. That the government understands that there is a problem called dementia, then you have a winner there, because now you can open doors.
हो जाएगा.
Correct.
Don't worry, don't worry.
Correct. No, I also feel it that way. So, Ramni, my last question to you before we close the podcast is, if you would like to share personal incidents or experience that you have had that really touched your heart and that really changed the way you have been perceiving things. This is my favorite question to all my guests, especially who are working with, in person with people with dementia. So, any
I
incidents that you like to share?
I actually, I've been in this field for 15 years. When I joined, the dementia care, I think I was 21 when I joined dementia care. And I was actually at that time working in a residential care facility for persons with dementia. And there used to be a gentleman, a very nice Gujarati gentleman, whom the family had admitted. Apparently, at the home when they were keeping him, he used to always wander off and he used to get lost too many times. And after a while, the family really could not manage and they put him in a residential care facility. Very soft, very kind, and a very gentle person. And I used to live in that residential care facility. So he and I were neighbors. So there was this manager's room and just next to it was the client's room, right? So he used to come and we used to go to temples together, and I used to take him out and all of that. So what will happen is he used to come and he used to tell me that there used to be a very nice lady in that room who used to take me out. I'm that lady, but he used to tell me there's a very nice lady in that room who used to take me out. Will you please tell her that I miss her, and I've not gone to the temple for 2 days now, but I took him yesterday. But then he came and told me I haven't gone to the temple for 2 days now. Please tell her, okay? But you know what? I don't remember her name, but you know just please tell her, okay? That was one incident that stayed with me. And I think as he progressed, I think one incident that stayed with me is when he came to my room and completely devastated, and he said that, my wife, somebody has kidnapped my wife. His wife was with him. She was
Yeah.
elderly, and he said, this Maji is telling me that she is my wife, but my wife is young. She has got two young children who have gone to school. Somebody has kidnapped, and now this lady is trying to do something with me. You please save me. And his wife broke down in front of me, and that day I really understood what dementia does to a person and to someone who's caring for that person. The person is there, he's there, his wife is there, but for both of them, each other is lost. They're still trying to find each other in spite of physically both of them being there. And that's what dementia does to a person. And that's the reason I think all of us who are in this field want to do so much more, because how can you answer such things? It's so difficult. So every day when I want to give up, that's the incident that tells me that you should not stop. There are so many lakhs and millions out there facing the same dilemma every day for 8 to 12 years. What can I do to make that better? What can I do to make an hour better? What can I do to make 10 minutes better for that family? And I think that's the perspective we all should come in when we bring dementia care. Yeah.
My mother's
That's
father,
very
my mother's father in Lucknow, who had this dementia, my nana, he used to keep a small stick. Earlier days, he used to go to the mall roads, the stick and all that. So whenever my mother used to come, okay, he never recognized any of them. So he'll just hit her. Who are you? Who are you? I'm your daughter. No, 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 no. I don't have any daughters now. So things like that. But out of that four children, there was only one, my mother's younger sister, who he had a slight comfort level with. Otherwise, he only recognized the domestic stuff. Recognized me in terms of he knew, okay, so and so is going to give me food and so is going to take me to the toilet, washroom. But otherwise, total blank. And so it's sad, but that is one aspect, and you're becoming totally dependent on that. Amazing. Seriously, it's
Yeah.
great.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think
No,
that's
I
the
think
passion drives Mrigna, that's the passion drives me, that's the passion drives you, that's the passion drives many of us. I'm sure that she also would agree that there are many days when it becomes too much. It affects you mentally, it affects you physically. But then the pain, sometimes what affects you gives you power to do better. And I think that's what we have to do every day. You know, you get up, you know there is a problem, you know there is no cure. So I always tell all my staff who are young, you know, they get really affected when they see somebody like that. Families who want to give up because they can't do it anymore. I always tell, you know, in dementia, there's one thing that you all need to remember, that you always prepare for the worst, but you always hope for the best, because there are moments where you will find your joy and happiness. Look out for those.
no, I personally believed in that, Ramani. And the fact is that working like so many years with people with dementia, I've also had my own favorite people. Whereas, I would do like a home visit to them, sit with them, chit chat. And sometimes there are people who are with issues of cognition, like sometimes they're not able to speak well, or they're not able to really trade anything. And I would just go sit with them and tell them all about my life, all my problems, all my good things, all my nice things. And I would do it on a regular basis. And suddenly one day I remember one of these aunties I used to work with, and I was talking to her, telling her about, this has been happening in my life, and I'm kind of stressed about it, and this is happening and that is happening. And in a moment of lucidity, she told me, but it will pass.
Yeah,
And
that's
that,
what they're wise. They are wise. Even in the
they're
most severe
wise, they're
stages, they
there.
are wise. They're there. That's the
Correct.
reason we say it's person with dementia. We don't say it's a
Correct.
patient. The person is very
Yes.
much there, still there, and they will
Yeah.
always be there. So they need to be treated with dignity, with respect for the
Mhm.
person who may be lost, but he's there.
Yeah. Very true. No, I also keep reminding all the people, especially the people who are the closest, the primary caregivers who are getting affected the most. It's a good reminder, especially the care staff, because see, the loved ones is who is a primary caregiver is doing it out of goodwill, out of the heart, out of the relationship. But the one who is like a assistant or somebody who's like an attendant staff is doing it for the money part of it, right? Which is a fact, right? They wouldn't be there otherwise, right?
Yeah,
So for them to feel motivated, I always remind them that look, this person is there, he's emotionally there. It's just that he's not able to tell you thank you back, once you do something for him. But otherwise, he's emotionally very thankful for what you're doing.
yeah, yeah,
So I think that winds up our session with a beautiful note. But it's only just one of the things we have spoken about. We would love to have furthermore conversation on these matters. And at the end of the day, like Pankaj said, like you said, to a government cannot have a million hands. So one by one, let's join one hand with each other and let's see where this chain goes. So
sure.
thank you so much, Ramani, for your
Thank you,
time.
Mrigna.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ramni. It
Pankaj
was
ji.
a pleasure to have you, and I'm sure once we convert this discussion into regional languages, a lot of people will benefit. I'm 100% sure on that. So with that,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.